Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be exploring the world of Leo Tolstoy,
Tolstoy.
but not the Tolstoy you might be thinking of, not War and Peace, not Anna Karenina. We're going deeper. We're going into The Kingdom of God is Within You, one of his later works.
Yeah, this one's really different. It's not a novel. It's more like philosophy
hmm
and theology all mixed together.
Yeah, and it's pretty intense. I mean, he's really grappling with some big questions here, like what does it actually mean to live as a Christian?
Yeah, and for Tolstoy, I mean, this wasn't just some theoretical debate, right? He was really trying to figure out how to live this out, how to put these ideas into practice.
And one of the core ideas that he kept coming back to, it was this idea of non-resistance to evil.
Mm.
And by that he meant like completely rejecting violence, no matter what.
Yeah, no exceptions. Even in self-defense, it's a pretty radical concept, especially back then, in late 19th century Russia. I mean,
Right, right. I mean, this is like Tsarist Russia, right?
right. Exactly. They had mandatory military service. So this idea of refusing to fight, it was huge.
And Tolstoy was really fascinated by groups that were actually trying to live this out, like the Quakers, for example.
Oh yeah, the Quakers, yeah. They were a big inspiration for him. I mean, they were totally committed to nonviolence in all aspects of their lives, personal, political, everything.
And they were really vocal about it too. Like they put out this declaration of sentiments where they basically lay out their whole philosophy.
Yeah, it's a powerful document. I mean, they connected non-resistance to like peace and forgiveness. It's about rejecting violence in all its forms.
And not just for individuals, right, but like for nations too. They believe that if it's wrong for a person to fight, then it's equally wrong for a country to go to war.
It's a pretty challenging idea to wrap your head around. I mean, can you imagine a world where countries just refuse to go to war?
It's hard to even picture, right? And Tolstoy knew that this wasn't going to be an easy sell. I mean, he got pushback from all sides, from religious people, from people who consider themselves free thinkers.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, right? You'd think the religious folks would be all about this nonviolence thing, considering, Jesus and all that.
Right. Turn the other cheek and all
Right.
that. But even some of them were like, well, hold on. What about, defending your family or your country? You can't just like let people walk all over you.
Yeah, they were trying to find like loopholes, you know, exceptions to the rule. And then the free thinkers, well, they mostly just thought Tolstoy was being naive.
Like, come on, this is the real world. You need some kind of force to keep things in order.
Right. Without armies and police, everything would just descend into chaos. That's what they thought anyway.
But Tolstoy didn't just like throw this idea out there without any context, right? He believed that Christianity was a living thing, something that was constantly evolving, becoming clearer over time.
Yeah. Yeah, he saw it as a process of like shedding all the falsehoods that had built up over the centuries, getting back to the true essence of Christ's message.
And this is where his critique of the church comes in. And let me tell you, he did not hold back.
Oh no, he did not. He really went after them, accused them of promoting rituals and doctrines that completely contradicted what Jesus actually taught.
Yeah, he saw a lot of hypocrisy. Like they were preaching love and compassion, but then turning a blind eye to violence and war.
And sometimes even actively supporting it.
It's like they were more focused on the outward show of religion than on actually living it out.
Yeah, and he had some specific examples. Like he was really bothered by all the pomp and circumstance surrounding Easter. He thought it completely missed the point of Christ's message.
So how did you think we could actually bridge this gap between, the ideals of Christianity and the messy reality of the world we live in?
Well, he thought a good place to start would be to clear up some of the misunderstandings about Christianity. Like he thought a lot of people saw it as a set of like rigid rules you had to follow.
Instead of like guiding principles.
Exactly. He saw it more like a compass, pointing you in the right direction but not telling you exactly which steps to take.
And he also thought there was this misconception that loving humanity somehow meant you couldn't also love God. Like it was an either thing.
He totally disagreed with that. He thought love for God was actually the basis for loving everyone else.
So it's all connected, right? It's not about picking and choosing who to love.
Right. It's about recognizing that love is like the fundamental force that connects us all.
And Tolstoy was really concerned about the contradictions he saw in modern life, between this ideal of brotherhood and then the reality of things like economic inequality, political oppression, and of course, war.
Yeah, war was a big one for him. He saw it as the ultimate hypocrisy. A society that claims to value Christian principles, but then is willing to send its young people off to kill and die.
He wasn't just talking about this in the abstract either, right? I mean, he had seen war firsthand. He served in the Crimean War.
Yeah, and it really marked him. He saw the horrors, the senselessness of it all, and he just couldn't reconcile that with his beliefs.
And his critique of war went beyond just like the battlefield, right?
Yeah.
He was also critical of the systems that made war possible in the first place. Like he really went after this idea of compulsory military service.
Yeah, he saw that as a tool of the state to control people, to force them to do things that went against their conscience.
And he believed that governments had all these ways of hypnotizing people into accepting violence and injustice as just a normal part of life.
Hypnotizing, that's an interesting word. What did he mean by that?
Yeah, it wasn't like literal hypnosis or anything. It was more about like the ways that governments use things like education and propaganda and even religion to shape people's thinking.
Oh, so kind of like social conditioning.
Exactly. Like think about how history is taught in schools, right? It's always focused on like national heroes and glorious victories.
And not so much on like the bad stuff.
Right. Which, it can create a sense of patriotism, but it also makes it easier to accept the government's actions without question.
Like you're taught to see the world through a very specific lens.
Yeah, a lens that often makes things like war and violence seem inevitable, even necessary.
It's like we're being programmed to think a certain way.
In a way, yeah. And that programming continues throughout our lives. The media we consume, the politicians we listen to, even like the things we see on TV, they all contribute to this.
So for Tolstoy, the key was to wake up from this hypnosis, to start seeing things for what they really are. Right. He believed that everyone has a conscience, but that it can be drowned out by all the noise of society.
So how did he think people could actually do that? Like, how do you break free from that kind of programming?
Well, he thought it started with becoming aware of it, recognizing that you're being influenced in ways that you might not even realize.
And then what? Like, once you're aware of it, what do you do?
Then you have to have the courage to act according to your conscience, even if it means going against the grain, even if it means challenging authority.
That sounds pretty scary.
It can be, yeah. But Tolstoy believed that true freedom came from following your inner voice, even when it's hard.
So it's about individual awakening.
Yeah.
But did he really think that individuals could actually change the world? Like, that's a pretty tall order, right?
It is. But he believed that when enough individuals start to awaken, it creates a shift in public opinion.
So it's not about, like, overthrowing the government or anything. It's about changing the way people think.
Right. And he believed that this change in public opinion would eventually lead to real, lasting change in society.
So it's a long game, but it's a powerful idea.
It is. And I think Tolstoy's own life is a testament to that. I mean, he was constantly challenging the status quo, even when it meant facing criticism and censorship.
Yeah, he wasn't afraid to speak his mind, even when it got him into trouble.
Right. And his writings, they inspired a lot of people to question the way things were, to imagine a better world.
One thing that really strikes me about Tolstoy is this belief in the power of individual conscience. Like, he never gave up on people, even in a system that was so oppressive.
Yeah, he believed that everyone had the capacity for moral choice, no matter what your circumstances were.
And he had some pretty incredible stories about people who actually did that, people who refused to participate in violence, even when it meant facing serious consequences.
Yeah, like those young men who refused to serve in the military because of their religious beliefs.
That took a lot of courage.
It did. And they were punished for it, of course, but they stood their ground.
It's inspiring, right? To think that even in those kinds of situations, people can still choose to do what they believe is right.
But Tolstoy was also realistic about the challenges involved. He knew that living a life of non-resistance wasn't easy.
It requires a lot of strength.
Yeah, and not physical strength necessarily, but moral strength. The strength to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard.
And he saw that kind of moral strength as being really important, especially when it came to war.
Oh, yeah. He thought war was the ultimate act of cowardice.
Cowardice? How so?
Well, because it's a way of avoiding the hard work of peace, of actually trying to resolve conflicts and address the root causes of violence.
So it's like taking the easy way out.
In a way, yeah. And he was really critical of people who tried to romanticize war, all that talk about glory and honor and
You
patriotism.
saw right through that.
He did.
Yeah.
And he believed that true patriotism wasn't about blind obedience, but about holding your country accountable to a higher moral standard.
To principles of justice and peace and respect for human life.
Exactly. And his critique of war, it's still so relevant today. I mean, we're still dealing with so much conflict and violence in the world.
Yeah, it's easy to feel powerless sometimes. Like, what can one person really do to change things?
I know. But Tolstoy reminds us that we're not powerless. We all have a choice in how we respond to these challenges.
And that even small acts of resistance can make a difference.
Right. It's about starting with ourselves, examining our own beliefs and actions, and then taking those small steps towards creating a more peaceful world.
One of the things that really stands out to me about Tolstoy is how he connects the personal to the political.
What do you mean?
Like, he doesn't see them as separate things. He believes that the way we live our individual lives has a direct impact on the kind of society we create.
Oh, absolutely. He thought that social change had to start with individual change.
So it's not just about changing the world out there. It's about changing ourselves.
Exactly. And he believed that this inner transformation, this commitment to living a more ethical life was the key to creating a more just and peaceful world.
Yeah, it's like he's saying the kingdom of God isn't some far-off place. It's something we can build right here, right now.
But that can feel kind of overwhelming, right? Like, where do you even begin? I mean, the world's a mess. What can one person actually do?
Well, Tolstoy would probably say start small. Like, focus on the things you can control. Your own choices, your own actions.
So, like, what kind of things are we talking about here? Give me an example.
Well, it could be something as simple as, like, refusing to participate in gossip or speaking up when you see someone being treated unfairly.
Okay, so everyday stuff.
Yeah.
But Tolstoy also believed in taking a stand against injustice on a larger scale.
Oh, yeah, definitely. He didn't think you could just sit back and be passive. If you see something wrong, you got to do something about it. Even if it means, like, going against authority.
Yeah.
Or risking your own safety.
Yeah, he believed that you had a moral obligation to act, no matter what the consequences might be.
That takes a lot of guts.
It does. But Tolstoy believed that there was a real sense of freedom that came from living that way. Like, when you're true to your conscience, you're not beholden to anyone else.
And that's more important than any material comfort or social status.
Exactly. And he believed that this inner freedom, this commitment to truth and justice, was what would ultimately lead to a better world.
You know, one of the things that amazes me about Tolstoy is how relevant his work still feels today. Like, he was writing over 100 years ago, but it's like he's speaking directly to us.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, we might not have mandatory military service anymore, but there's still so much violence and oppression in the world.
Yeah, and we're still bombarded with all this propaganda trying to convince us that it's all normal, that we can't do anything about it.
It's like the hypnotism he was talking about is even more powerful now.
Right. With all the social media and the 24-hour news cycle, it's hard to know what to believe sometimes.
It is. But Tolstoy reminds us that we have a choice. We don't have to just accept things the way they are.
We can choose to resist. We can choose to build a better world.
Exactly. And it starts with each of us, making those small choices every day to live a more compassionate, more just life.
So Tolstoy might not have all the answers, but he definitely asked the right questions.
He did. He made us think about what it really means to be human, what it means to live a life of purpose and meaning.
And to take responsibility for the world around us.
Exactly. And, even if you don't agree with everything he said, I think there's something really powerful about his message, something that can really inspire us to try to be better people.
Well said.
Yeah.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into the kingdom of God is within you. Hopefully it's given you some food for thought. And maybe even a little bit of hope.
Yeah, maybe even a little bit of fire, too, to go out there and make a difference.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you next time for another deep dive.